This has really taken the assault on the rule of law to a new level. Really from the beginning of this presidency, President Trump has not observed the time-honored norm that's been in place, at least since Watergate, that there should be a real division between the Department of Justice and the White House.
Former Obama officials on the defense over allegations of a politically orchestrated spy ring to hurt President Trump's campaign. And our next guest warns Sally Yates has a lot to be worried about. Here to explain it, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Tom, good morning. Thank you for coming in on Memorial Day.
Good morning. God bless America.
Yes, indeed. So, Sally Yates, assault on the rule of law. What is your reaction? What do you make of this?
Well, it's a bit rich, given the fact that she was fired as acting AG for her refusal to uphold the rule of law, Trump's travel ban. She just refused to defend it, contrary to her obligations as a lawyer and attorney general, so she got fired. And she was the number two in the Obama Justice Department. She was Obama's Rod Rosenstein. So she would have signed off on the Clinton DNC dossier misuse before the FISA courts. She would have signed off on the Spygate spy. She would have signed off on the use of national security letters to take up the Trump campaign's phone records. She would have signed off on all of this investigating that was really just targeting of Donald Trump. And when Giuliani talks about the illegitimate nature of the Mueller investigation, it's because of the activities of people like Sally Yates, who set up the Mueller investigation, including the Flynn ambush interview that led to his plea deal, that have raised questions about the Mueller operation itself. And just quickly, the President of the United States has an obligation, when he learns of information that the Justice Department and FBI may have abused the law, to raise issues and to say, you need to investigate this.
Okay, so I want to get back to Sally Yates and investigating her, but what she's saying is that the assault on the rule of law is that the president was directing the DOJ. Specifically to her criticism, have you seen anything that President Trump has been directing DOJ officials, Yates or otherwise?
No, the only thing he's done, he's asked the DOJ to investigate the allegations behind Spygate. And frankly, he could be doing a whole lot more under the Constitution to bring the Justice Department back under control. You know, Barack Obama said that Hillary Clinton shouldn't be prosecuted in the middle of the Clinton email investigation. Did Sally Yates complain about that? I don't think so. You had Hillary Clinton's investigation, investigation, thoroughly politicized because of what Barack Obama did, but she had no problem with that. And of course, Barack Obama was briefed on the anti-Trump investigation repeatedly.
Right, Tom.
She had no problem with that.
So quickly, because we're almost out of time, the House Judiciary and Oversight Committee has a joint investigation into the Clinton email scandal. Do you believe Sally Yates should be subpoenaed, should appear and answer questions?
Sally Yates would be a top witness in the abuses of the Justice Department, targeting President Trump and helping Hillary Clinton, for sure. All
right, Tom Fitton joining us this morning on Memorial Day. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you, Griff.
Let's begin our Ingram Angle special report on the Russian cloud with a look at Spygate. That's what President Trump calls the growing reports that the FBI under Obama placed at least one informant or spy in his presidential campaign. Those reports also fuel suspicion on the right that the Russia investigation has been nothing more than a political coup by Obama allies in the deep state against the duly elected President of the United States. In the era of an exploding surveillance state, have we actually witnessed an administration infiltrate the presidential campaign of the opposing party? An editorial in Wednesday's Investors Business Daily points out how timing is everything. The IBD noted that the timeline of the FBI's Russia investigation keeps shifting. And the earlier the probe began, quote, the less likely it is that it had anything to do with Russian involvement in the 2016 elections, but everything to do with stopping the surprising surge of Trump during the GOP primaries and beyond. Let's examine that prospect with some top-notch experts. Former FBI Special Agent Jeff Beatty is in Orlando. In Washington, Bill Benny, who served more than 30 years as a top intel official with the NSA before turning whistleblower. And here in New York, Steve Rogers, a former member of FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. Steve, we'll start with you. I have a theory here, and one's bad and one's a little worse. First, the Obama administration thought that there was Russian infiltration, so they used the Trump officials as bait in order to lure the Russians in. But nothing materialized, and they looked around and they thought, you know, I have some Trump people on the hook here, let's turn the screws. Or it was deceitful from the very beginning. They wanted eyes and ears in the Trump campaign. So without any probable cause, they cooked up this echo chamber of spies and lies and misinformation to get the surveillance. What do you think?
Jesse, if they were going for the Russians, they would have gone to the Trump campaign. They would have there in their hands the greatest assets of human intelligence right in the Trump campaign. They would have wired those individuals up and said, look, the Russians are coming after you. We need you. We need to wire you up. Let's trap the Russians. It was deceitful from the beginning. They were never going after the Russians, Jesse. They were going after Donald Trump.
Yeah, you know, Bill, where are the Russians here in this investigation? Because we see a lot of spies and FBI people. We haven't seen a lot of Russian spies. Have they ever materialized?
Not that I can see. I mean, even the evidence they put forth to say it was a Russian hack from Guccifer 2 turns out to be a very clear fabrication, in fact, a very poor one. And it's provable through forensics that it's not a valid download remotely. So, I mean, all of it was fabricated.
So, Jeff, like Bill just mentioned, this all started with the so-called hack of the Democrats' computers. Now, the counter-intel investigation opened up a couple weeks after the emails released in the summer with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Remember, they rigged the primary, all that stuff. Why didn't the FBI then go look at the server at the DNC and do a forensic audit? I mean, wouldn't that be the first place you'd look if you were looking for Russian infiltration?
Well, you know, that goes back to 2015, and I'm a believer in your course of action, too, that you outlined at the top of the show, Jesse. But let me just give you what I see as the bluff, the bottom line up front. You know, the FBI gave a defensive briefing to the Democratic National Committee when they had information that there was a foreign entity trying to sway, influence, or move into or penetrate the Democratic apparatus. They did not do that for the Republican apparatus, as Steve alluded to. You know, what they did from the very beginning was treat the Republican apparatus differently. Democrat, defensive briefing, let's work together. Republican, I really think it was nothing but a fig leaf to use other government agencies to introduce a Russian raison d'etre to explain why they could then go ahead, launch an investigation for two purposes, Jesse. I think, first of all, to get political intelligence as to what was going on the inside of the campaign so that they could use it. But secondly, to be able to destroy their enemy. These guys, not to use a Chris Matthews reference, these guys were playing hardball. And, you know,
please, no Chris Matthews references on the show. Those are now banned for the rest of the hour.
Okay, no more. No more.
No, but you did pick up on a serious issue, though. Hold on, let me just get it. You
destroy your enemy or they'll destroy you.
Right. So they have suspicions about either Page or Manafort or Papadopoulos in the spring. And instead of maybe interviewing Papadopoulos or Page or whoever, Manafort, they don't do any of that. They don't even alert Donald Trump that they, you know, hey, we're supposed to protect you. Maybe, you know, there could be some issues. Instead, they just wiretap everybody and send spy rings throughout the whole campaign. It doesn't seem like an anti-Russia operation. It seems like an anti-Trump operation.
I believe the stage
They didn't even go into the
during,
DNC to see if there was a Russian in there opening a back door to the servers.
I believe the stage was set the day James Comey testified befefore Congress and gave Hillary Clinton a pass, never really pursued the 33,000 missing emails, number one. What happened to Bill Clinton and the famous tarmac meeting at the airport with Loretta Lynch? They gave her a pass. And now, as I said earlier, why didn't they go to the Trump campaign and say, look, we think the Russians are coming. What we need you to do is to wire your people up. We want to trap the Russians. They tried to trap President Donald Trump, and they failed.
That's because they had them all wired. They were all copied. I mean, everything. Once you get one person in a campaign, you have the whole campaign. That's a two-hop principle.
That's right. That's right. And half these guys were coming in and out of Trump Tower. The other couple guys were overseas. They threw everything at this campaign. They threw spies, informants, and secret subpoenas, electronic surveillance, fake dossiers, unmasking. Every technicality that you use in an investigation, they threw everything at these guys. And you know what? Donald Trump still won the election.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that say?
No evidence. No evidence of collusion. None.
No.
Right.
And keep in mind, though, Jesse, that they're using the NSA databases to do all this spying, and those go back to 2001, so they can retroactively analyze all the data on everyone in the campaign.
Right. Now, Clapper, as we all remember, one of the top intelligence chiefs under President Barack Obama, has been doing the rounds on television, and he disputes the whole spying thing, kind of. Here's his spin.
I think he's deliberately spinning the narrative that whereby he's a victim of the deep state spying on him or spying on the campaign, which is not the case. It's what I would call my informed opinion that given the massive effort the Russians made and the number of citizens that they touched, to me it just exceeds logic and credulity that they didn't affect the election. And it's my belief they actually turned it.
So I ask you, was the FBI spying on Trump's campaign?
No, they were not. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing.
Why doesn't he like that? He should be happy that.
Well, he should be.
Okay, first of all, James Clapper's on The View. I don't think the top intel guy from any team should be on The View. Second of all, he just admitted they spied. But wait, they were just trying to help President Trump. President Trump should thank them for spying on the campaign, right?
Jesse, one thing you said opening up, and the question is, did the Obama administration know about this? Did the Justice Department under Obama know about this? I don't believe for 1 minute they didn't know. I believe Obama knew about what was going on. I believe his Justice Department knew what was going on, and it's all falling apart.
You know, that's a great point, Bill. We have evidence that the White House was in the loop on this. We have some Page Strzok texts. At one point, they say, quote, the White House is running this, talking about this counterintelligence operation. There are these briefings with the top people in the Obama team. White House Chief of Staff was in on the loop on this. How could Obama not know that this was happening?
I mean, after all, when you have just take the Steele dossier, for example, that was some fellow from MI6, which is the equivalent of CIA, and then CIA was involved, FBI was involved, and the Department of Justice. The only place those organizations come to a point where it can be ordered and coordinated is the president.
Yeah, and so, we do have records now that this spy, or whatever you want to call him, over there in England, he was getting paid pretty handsomely by the Obama administration right around the same time he was running these dirty tricks. This guy was connected to MI6, CIA. He'd done some dirty tricks in elections in the past. He'd been outspoken about his support for Hillary Clinton, and even tried to get a job within the Trump administration afterwards. So, Jeff, I mean, it's all coming apart.
It is, you know, and to see Clapper and Brennan out there with the titles of, you know, former director, et cetera, you know, these guys are no longer intelligence officials, and it's time for the president to start striking back at them. And by that, I mean, a lot of these senior people get to keep their security clearances so that they can consult within people with government. There's no need for to have security clearances anymore. Start taking away Brennan's security clearance or access to anything, Clapper's security clearance or access to anything, because they have become partisans. They are not out there doing what they're supposed to have done as professionals, which is to do your job and be blind, be agnostic when it comes to party politics.
That's a bold move to make, and I think President Trump would probably make that move, or at least flirt with doing that. You brought up an interesting point about people, though, still in the FBI or still in the DOJ that do have these clearances. We're hearing word here at Fox News that there may be some people coming forward, maybe some whistleblowers that might like to talk about how James Comey ran these operations, how he dealt with the Clintons, how he dealt with the Trump campaign. Let's just go around. If you guys were still in the government, would you guys come forward and testify and lawyer up?
Well, the good news is the OIG report's about to come out, and the OIG has the ability to protect the whistleblowers within the Department of Justice and within the FBI. So I'm hopeful, optimistic that some of those folks will do the right thing and get protected by the OIG, and we might see some of their content coming out in his report.
Steve, what about you?
Jesse, they need to break down the blue wall of silence. When the ship is sinking, no one is going to throw you a life raft.
And Bill, what do you think?
Well, I mean, according to the Constitution, you have recourse to Congress, and that's exactly what I did in 2002 and won.
You won.
I mean, I went to Congress
All
to
right.
report some of the spying on U.S. citizens. It's all a lie when they tell you they're after the Russians. All their tapping points in the Fairview program are internal in the U.S. There's 11 points that they could pick up every foreigner coming into or out of or through the United States. If they stayed at those 11 points, they get them all.
Yeah, and you know what? If they actually, you know, the Russians that they did indict, all they were doing was calling Hillary names on Facebook. Not that bad. Guys, got to run. Thank you.